Okay, let's talk about habits. What is that one stubborn habit? You know, the one, that thing you keep doing even though you know it's holding you back somehow.
That loop you feel stuck in.
Exactly. Maybe it's grabbing your phone the second you feel bored or stressed, that mindless scrolling thing.
Yeah, or putting off that big project, procrastination, right? Until the deadline is screaming at you.
Or maybe it's like reaching for certain foods when you feel emotional, or that voice in your head, the negative self-talk.
That can be a really tough one. Or even just staying stuck, staying in your comfort zone when you know you need to grow, but it feels, I don't know, safer.
Totally. So if any of that sounds familiar, if you felt that frustration you want to change, maybe you've even tried, but you keep falling back into those old ways, think of this deep dive as maybe a personal guide.
Yeah, like a manual almost. We've been looking at some really insightful material from an expert in behavioral change, someone deep in transformation coaching.
And what we're sharing today, it isn't just theory, it's really practical stuff pulled from these sources about how to understand and, importantly, how to reshape those patterns.
Because the core idea, and it's powerful, is that your habits, they aren't just actions you take, they actually form your identity.
And that identity you build, habit by habit, well, that shapes your future. It really does.
Fundamentally.
So our mission today is kind of twofold. First, let's really dig into why. Why is it so hard to break habits, especially the ones we know aren't good for us? What's going on emotionally, neurologically?
Right, get under the hood a bit.
And second, based on these sources, we want to lay out a really clear, practical system, a step-by-step approach for interrupting those old habits and, crucially, wiring in new ones that actually serve who you want to be.
And that wiring in part is so important, isn't it? Because often our first reaction is just willpower. I'll just force myself.
Grit your teeth, yeah.
Exactly. Just be more disciplined. But the materials we looked at really push back on that. They argue pretty strongly that habit persistence isn't usually about a lack of willpower. It's way more about how our brains work and how we've learned to manage our feelings.
That changes the game, doesn't it? It shifts it from like, I'm weak to, okay, this is a system I learned, maybe a faulty one, but a system.
Yes. It's more mechanical, less moral.
Okay, so let's dive into that first part then. Why is it so ridiculously hard sometimes to break these patterns, even when we logically know this isn't helping me? What's keeping us stuck?
Well, a key point from the sources is that habits aren't just actions. They're not just things you do. They are deeply ingrained pathways, emotional pathways, neurological pathways.
Pathways, like grooves in the brain.
Sort of, yeah. Think of your brain as incredibly efficient. Its job is to save energy. So once it figures out that doing X leads to Y outcome, especially an outcome that makes you feel a bit better, even temporarily, it automates that connection.
Puts it on autopilot.
Yeah. Exactly. Creates a shortcut. And here's the kicker. The brain, in this process, it doesn't really judge. It doesn't sit there asking, is strolling Instagram for an hour actually good for my long-term goals?
No, it just knows.
It just knows, okay, last time I felt that twitch of boredom, the cue, doing this, the routine, gave me a little hit of distraction, the reward. Let's run that program again. Quick. Automatic.
So trying to just stop that automatic program with conscious thought, with willpower, that's like fighting your own brain's efficiency setting.
Pretty much. You're swimming upstream. Yeah. Willpower, as the sources point out, it's finite. It gets depleted like a muscle that gets tired, or your phone battery draining.
Right. Stress, tiredness, making lots of other decisions. It all drains that battery.
Totally. So you can't rely on something that runs out to fight a system that's designed to run effortlessly in the background. The analogy used in the material is great, actually. Trying to break a deep habit with only willpower. It's like trying to rewire your house with a hammer.
Okay, yeah. Wrong tool for the job. You need to understand the wiring first.
You need the screwdriver, the voltage tester.
Yeah.
You need to know how the circuits work before you can change them safely and effectively.
And this leads to that weird paradox the sources mention. Even the habits we know are bad for us may be causing guilt or health problems or relationship issues. They stick around because in the moment, they offer some kind of relief, some kind of comfort.
That immediate temporary relief is absolutely key. It's the glue that holds the habit loop together. Think about it. The distraction from anxiety, the sugar rush, the brief escape smoking might provide.
A numbing effect of too much TV.
Right. In that instant, the brain registers, okay, that uncomfortable feeling, doing this action made it feel better, or at least less bad right now. And that immediate payoff, even if it causes problems later, reinforces the whole sequence. It tells the brain, hey, remember this pathway. Useful for that feeling. Let's make it automatic.
So the real breakthrough then isn't just focusing on the behavior itself, the thing you want to stop, but getting curious about the feeling underneath it, the emotional need it's trying to meet.
That's it. That is honestly probably the biggest single insight from all this material. Lasting change doesn't come from just forcing the action to stop. It comes from understanding the why behind the action. What deeper need, what discomfort, what feeling is this habit, however clumsily, trying to address?
It's like a habit is a really bad solution to an unacknowledged problem.
Exactly. A misguided attempt to cope. So you have to look beneath the surface behavior. What is this habit trying to soothe or fill or escape from?
Okay, that completely reframes it. It's not, I'm bad for doing this. It's, this habit is a signal. What's the signal pointing to?
A signal about an unmet need or an unprocessed feeling.
All right, so if we understand it's about these automated loops and the needs they're trying to meet, let's break down that structure the sources talk about, the habit loop. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, the habit loop is presented as the basic building block. It applies to good habits, bad habits, any habit really. It's a 3-step neurological sequence. And often it runs so fast, we're not even consciously aware of it unfolding.
Okay, step 1.
Step 1 is the cue. This is the trigger. It's the signal to your brain to switch into automatic mode and run the habit routine. Cues can be anything, really.
Like what?
Well, internal feelings are big ones. Stress, boredom, anxiety, loneliness, insecurity, like the sources mentioned.
Yeah.
But they can also be external. Time of day, seeing a certain person, walking into a specific room, hearing a notification sound.
Ah, like the ding on your phone.
Exactly. Or even finishing one task can be a cue to start procrastinating on the next one. The cue basically says, okay, conditions are right, engage habit program now.
Got it. So the brain links that specific cue to step 2.
The routine.
Precisely. The routine is the behavior itself. It's the action you automatically take when the cue appears. This is the part we usually focus on: the scrolling, the snacking, the nail biting, the overthinking, the people pleasing.
The doing part.
The doing part. It's the observable action.
And then the final piece that makes it stick, the reward. Yes, step 3, the reward. This is the benefit the brain perceives from doing the routine. And like we said, it's often that immediate temporary feeling of relief or distraction or comfort or maybe a sense of completion, even if it's ultimately unhelpful.
So the reward tells the brain, hey, that routine, it worked for that cue.
It did. It reinforces the whole loop. So let's say the cue is feeling overwhelmed at work. The routine might be checking social media. The reward is a few minutes of distraction and mental escape from the overwhelm. The brain learns. Overwhelm it per teen. Check social media. Feel temporary escape. Lock it in.
So the basic formula the sources describe is feel X, cue, do Y routine, get Z, reward. Simple but incredibly powerful because it runs on autopilot.
Exactly right. And that automatic nature is precisely why awareness is the absolute non-negotiable first step to changing it. You can't change a process you don't even realize is happening.
You have to see the matrix, basically.
Kind of. You have to bring those 3 elements, the cue, the routine, the reward, into your conscious mind. That's the foundation.
Okay, but how? If it's so automatic, how do you become aware? How do you catch it?
It takes practice. Intentional pausing. The sources suggest becoming a detective of your own behavior. Asking yourself specific questions, either right when you feel the urge or maybe just after you've done the habit.
Like what kind of questions?
First, what am I feeling right now? Just before I did that, wanted to do that. Really pinpoint the emotion or sensation. Am I anxious, bored, lonely, restless, tired? What is the actual feeling that's identified with the cue?
Okay, so name the feeling, then what?
Then, what need am I trying to meet by doing this? Connect the feeling to the drive. Am I trying to escape this feeling? Soothe myself. Get a dopamine hit. Feel in control. Connect. Avoid failure. What's the underlying purpose of the routine?
Trying to figure out what the habit is doing for you functionally.
Yes. And the third question, which is crucial for change. Is there a healthier, more effective way I could meet this need right now?
That immediately points towards solutions, doesn't it? Not just analysis.
It does. It opens the door. It shifts from, I must stop this bad thing, to, how can I get this legitimate need met in a better way?
Wow. Just asking those questions, it feels like it creates a moment of space, doesn't it? A pause between the urge and the action.
It does. You're interrupting the automatic flow with consciousness. You're observing instead of just reacting. Even if you still do the habit initially, just noticing, there's the boredom cue. Now I feel the urge to scroll. I think I'm trying to avoid feeling restless. that awareness itself is progress. It's the first step to regaining control.
Shining a light on the hidden years.
Exactly.
Now, something else the sources brought up that I found really interesting is that not all damaging habits are obvious. Some are, well, sneaky. They hide.
Yes, this is a really important point. We tend to focus on the big ones, smoking, drinking too much, junk food. But there are many subtle patterns that quietly sabotage us. They might even look normal or even positive on the surface.
What are some examples the sources give of these sneaky saboteurs?
One huge one they mention is overthinking.
Which can feel like being responsible, right? Being careful.
It can masquerade as that. I'm just being thorough. I need to analyze this properly. But the sources define the habit of overthinking as unproductive rumination, just spinning your wheels mentally.
Chewing on worries, replaying conversations.
Exactly. Predicting negative outcomes, going over and over things without actually reaching a decision or taking action. It's often triggered by uncertainty or fear, and the reward is this false sense of doing something, of being in control, when really you're just stuck in a mental loop. It drains energy without progress.
Okay, that definitely sounds familiar. What else?
People pleasing. This one is tricky because it looks like kindness. Being agreeable, helpful, accommodating. These seem like good traits.
Society tells us they are.
Right. But the sources argue that chronic people-pleasing is often rooted in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of disapproval. The cue is someone else's potential unhappiness or need. The routine is saying yes when you mean no, suppressing your own needs, overcommitting. And the reward, avoiding the immediate discomfort of potential conflict or disappointing someone.
But the long-term cost is huge. Resentment, burnout.
Loss of self, yeah. It eats away at your energy and your boundaries.
And procrastination, we touched on it, but it fits here too.
Definitely. The sources frame procrastination not as laziness, but almost always as emotional avoidance. The cue is the unpleasant feeling associated with a task, boredom, anxiety, overwhelm, fear of failure.
Right, the feeling about the task.
Yes. The routine is doing anything else. Checking email, cleaning the kitchen, watching one more video. The immediate reward is relief from that unpleasant feeling, just for a moment.
Even though it makes the pressure worse later.
But the loop cares about the immediate reward. That's what locks it in.
And the last one mentioned was negative self-talk.
This one is maybe the most insidious, according to the sources, because it directly shapes your identity. If you constantly tell yourself, I'm stupid, I always fail, I'm not good enough,
You start to believe it and act like it.
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The cue might be a tiny mistake or constructive criticism. The routine is that internal barrage of negativity. And the reward, it's perverse, but sometimes it's a feeling of certainty. See, I knew I'd mess up. Or it helps you avoid the vulnerability of trying again. It defines who you think you are, and then your actions follow suit.
Wow. So these aren't just minor personality quirks. They can be genuine habits, quietly draining our potential, our confidence, our time, without us even fully realizing their impact.
Exactly. Recognizing them often requires a deeper look, asking, is this pattern really serving me? Or is it just a familiar rut that's holding me back?
Okay, so we've explored the why, the brain science, the emotional drivers. We've dissected the habit loop. We've even uncovered some hidden habits. Now for the crucial part. How do we actually change things? The sources offer a practical 4-step system. Let's break that down.
Right, this is the how-to. It's a structured approach to intervene in that loop and build something new.
Step 1.
Step 1, interrupt the cue. So the first place to intervene is right at the beginning, the trigger. When that familiar cue pops up, the stress hits, the boredom creeps in, the notification sounds out. The goal is to break the automatic connection to the old routine. You need to create a pause.
How? What did the sources suggest?
They suggest using what's called a pattern breaker. It's a simple, immediate action you take right then to disrupt the flow.
Like what kind of action?
Things like taking 3 really deep, conscious breaths, splashing cold water on your face, or doing some quick, vigorous physical movement, stand up, stretch hard, do 10 jumping jacks, walk quickly around the room, something physical and immediate.
So it's like hitting a reset button, physically and mentally.
Yeah, it scrambles the signal momentarily. It disrupts that smooth, unconscious pathway from cue to routine. It creates that vital space, that pause. So you're not just instantly reacting on autopilot. You're putting a speed bump on the old mental highway.
Okay, so step 1 creates the space. What do you do in that space? Step 2.
Step 2, feel. Instead of numb, this is often the toughest part, but maybe the most transformative. Once you've used your pattern breaker and created that pause, The next step is to resist the urge to jump into the old numbing, distracting routine. Instead, you intentionally turn towards the feeling that triggered the cue.
So if the cue is anxiety, you actually sit with the anxiety.
Yes, you allow yourself to feel it without judgment, without immediately trying to fix it or run away from it using the old habit. You observe it. Okay, anxiety is here. It feels tight in my chest. It's uncomfortable.
That sounds hard.
It is hard initially. It takes courage. But the practice is about building emotional tolerance, learning that you can experience uncomfortable feelings and that they are temporary. They rise, they peak, they pass. You don't have to reactively numb them or act on the craving they might generate. You're learning to surf the emotional wave instead of getting wiped out or running from it.
So you're processing the feeling, not avoiding it. Okay. Then, after you've allowed yourself to feel it, what's step 3?
Step 3, replace the routine. Now that you've interrupted the cue and acknowledged the feeling, you consciously choose a new behavior. The goal isn't just to stop the old thing and leave a vacuum. It's to actively substitute it with something healthier, more constructive.
And the sources said this replacement should ideally meet the same need.
Yeah, ideally it addresses the underlying need or provides a similar kind of reward, just in a healthier way. So if the old habit, say stress eating, was trying to provide comfort, the replacement routine might be making a cup of tea and sitting quietly for 5 minutes, or calling a supportive friend, or deep breathing, something that also provides comfort or relief, but constructively.
Okay, so find a healthier way to scratch the itch, essentially.
Exactly. The example given was journaling instead of binge eating when feeling overwhelmed. Binging offers temporary numbing. Journaling offers emotional processing and release. Both address the overwhelm, but one is destructive, the other constructive. You're actively teaching your brain. Cue new, healthy routine, better reward, like genuine relief or clarity.
Rewiring the loop with a better destination. Got it. And the final step, step 4, it brings us back to identity.
Step 4, anchor with identity. This is about making the change stick for the long haul. The sources argue powerfully that to truly embed a new habit, to make it feel like you need to connect it to your sense of self. It's about consciously saying, this new behavior, this is who I am now.
How does that work in practice?
As you practice the new routine, steps 1 to 3, even imperfectly, you're collecting evidence. Evidence that you can handle the feeling, that you can choose differently. Step 4 is about consciously acknowledging that evidence and using it to update your self-concept. You tell yourself, I am someone who deals with stress constructively. I am someone who prioritizes my well-being. I am someone who finishes what they start.
So you're linking the action to your being.
Yes. You're aligning the behavior with a desired identity. This makes the new habit feel less like something you have to do and more like a natural expression of who you are becoming. It creates internal consistency, which is very motivating.
That feels really important. The difference between I'm trying to change and I am changing, this is me now.
It's huge. It taps into a much deeper level of motivation than just willpower or tracking streaks. It's about becoming.
Let's stay on that identity piece for just a moment longer because it feels so central to what the sources were saying. How do our habits get so tangled up with who we think we are in the first place?
Well, the argument is essentially that your brain is always trying to build a coherent story about you. And the most readily available data, your actions. What you do repeatedly becomes the evidence for who you are.
So I always hit snooze.
Your brain concludes, okay, evidence suggests I am not a morning person.
Mm-hmm.
If you consistently avoid public speaking, evidence suggests I am shy or anxious. If you constantly criticize yourself, evidence suggests I am not very capable.
And these labels, these identities, they stick.
They become self-identifications. And they can be really limiting because they create a feedback loop. You believe you're undisciplined. So when you inevitably slip up on a new diet, your brain goes, see? Told you. That's just who you are, which makes it harder to try again.
It confirms the negative story, so the strategy is to consciously rewrite the story.
Exactly. You interrupt the old story by changing the narrative. The sources emphasize using language deliberately. You actively craft and affirm the identity you want to embody, the one that aligns with your new desired habits.
So instead of I'm such a procrastinator,
you might say, I am becoming someone who tackles tasks promptly. Or even better, I am the kind of person who honors my commitments, including those to myself. Or I am focused and productive.
These aren't just wishful thinking, though.
No, because you're backing them up with action via the other steps.
Yeah.
Each time you interrupt the cue, feel the feeling, and choose the replacement routine, you're generating new evidence for this new identity. The self-talk then reinforces and integrates that evidence. You're telling your subconscious, pay attention. This is the new program we're running. This is who we are now.
So every small win in changing the behavior is also a small win in building the new identity.
Precisely. You're casting votes for the person you want to become with your actions, and then you're cementing those votes with your internal language. It creates this powerful synergy. Action informs identity. Identity reinforces action.
That example from the sources about shifting from I'm quitting junk food to I'm someone who honors my body, that really lands differently, doesn't it?
Right. It really does. Quitting feels like deprivation, a struggle against something. Honoring my body is positive, value-driven. It reframes the choice. Avoiding the junk food isn't a painful sacrifice anymore. It's a natural consequence of who you are and what you value.
That feels much more sustainable. Empowering, even.
That's the idea. It shifts from a battle against yourself to an alignment with your chosen self. Habit by habit, you're building that self.
This whole framework feels so much more hopeful and, well, practical than just try harder. And to make it even more concrete, the sources listed some specific tools people can use right away. Let's run through those.
Yeah, some really actionable things to help put the 4 steps into practice.
Okay, first up.
The 5-second rule. We've probably all heard of this one. Super simple. When you have the instinct to act on a goal or use your pattern breaker, get out of bed, make that call, start the report, instead of thinking, you count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
And just move on. Go.
Just physically move. The idea is it interrupts the hesitation, the excuses, the overthinking that your brain throws up in those few seconds. You act before your brain can talk you out of it. It's pure activation energy.
Bypasses the resistance.
Nice.
What else?
A habit tracker. Very straightforward, but effective. Get a calendar, a journal, an app, whatever works for you, and physically mark off each day you successfully do your new replacement routine or follow the 4 steps.
Why does seeing it visually help so much?
It provides proof. It builds momentum. Seeing that chain of X's or check marks is motivating. It makes your progress tangible. Each mark is a small win, reinforcing the new behavior and providing concrete evidence for that new identity we talked about. Look, I am doing this.
Creates a satisfying visual streak. Okay, next tool.
Temptation barrier. This is about proactively engineering your environment for success. Basically make the bad habit harder to do and the good habit easier. Increase the friction for the unwanted behavior.
So, like, hiding the cookies or deleting the app.
Exactly. Hide the cookies on a high shelf. Or better yet, don't buy them. Delete the distracting app or bury it deep in a folder. Unplug the TV and put the remote somewhere inconvenient. Log out of social media sites. Avoid walking past the bakery if that's a trigger. Make the unhealthy choice require more effort than the healthy one.
Smart. You're using laziness to your advantage almost, making the good path the path of least resistance.
Precisely. Don't rely solely on willpower when you can just make the temptation less accessible. Then there's the replacement ritual.
We talked about replacing the routine in step 3, so this is reinforcing that.
Yes, framing it as a specific tool emphasizes the importance of having a planned alternative. You don't just stop the old thing. You have a specific go-to healthy action ready. So when the cue hits, you don't have to think, oh no, what should I do instead? You execute your pre-planned ritual. Cue. Feel stressed after meeting. Replacement ritual. Stand up, stretch, drink a glass of water, take 5 deep breaths. It's automatic plan substitution.
Having the plan removes the decision fatigue in the moment. Makes sense. And the last one.
Self-talk scripts. This ties directly back to step 4, anchoring the identity. It means consciously crafting and using specific phrases or mantras that reinforce the person you are becoming and counter the old negative programming.
So writing down things like,
I am capable and resourceful. I handle challenges with calm focus. My well-being is a priority. I choose progress over perfection. And then you intentionally repeat these, especially when you feel tempted by the old habit or hear the old negative voice starting up. You're actively rewriting your internal dialogue to support your goals.
actively programming the mind. Okay, these tools make the whole process feel very doable, step-by-step actions.
And that's really the key message from the sources, isn't it? Transformation isn't usually one giant leap. It's about consistency with these small, deliberate actions. It's not about being perfect.
No, it's about
showing up again tomorrow. It's about returning to the awareness, returning to the choice, day after day. Every time you interrupt the cue, feel the feeling, choose the replacement, anchor the identity. Even if you slipped up yesterday, that's a win. Those small wins accumulate. They build the new pathways, the new identity, until eventually it just becomes normal, your new way of being.
like water carving stone. It's the consistency.
Exactly.
Wow. This deep dive has been incredibly insightful, understanding the why behind stuckness and then getting such a clear, actionable how. It feels genuinely empowering.
It really does shift the perspective away from blaming yourself and towards understanding the system and knowing you have tools to change that system.
So for everyone listening, if you've ever felt like your habits define you in a way you don't like, if you've felt stuck with labels like undisciplined or lazy or just not a person, maybe let this sink in. Those patterns are learned, they are wired, but they are not you permanently.
You are not your habits. You are the awareness behind your habits, and you have the capacity to choose differently, to consciously wire in new patterns starting today.
And remember, changing isn't about suddenly becoming perfect. It's a practice. It's about, like you said, returning to awareness, returning to your intention, returning to the person you are choosing to become over and over, with kindness towards yourself when you stumble.
That self-compassion piece is vital. It's part of the process, not a sign of failure.
Absolutely. So thinking about that powerful link the sources drew between our habits and our identity, that what we do shapes who we become. Here's a final thought to maybe carry with you from this deep dive.
Considering the person you truly aspire to be, what is one very small, concrete action you could take today, right now, or later today? Something that aligns with that future self, that casts a vote for that identity you want to build.
It doesn't have to be huge, just one small step. What could it be?
Think about that choice. Because even the smallest action, taken consciously in alignment with who you want to become, is a powerful act of creation. It's you, building you.
Choose awareness. Choose growth. Choose that person you're becoming, one intentional step at a time.